Okay, I think we're live. Welcome to in the middle of it. Here we are in Malden. I'm not sure how we got here, but here we are. Special
We found our
election.
way.
Yep, special election for the Prop 2.5 tax override. First, one to thank our city clerk and our city clerk's office and the staff for all the work they do to ensure that our election runs smoothly, and the poll workers too. That's very important to our election process. So today, we first want to say we have live chat if anybody wants to chime in and tell us whatever you think. It's been quite a wild ride this whole time. So there were the two ballot questions, as we know, question 1A and 1B. 1A would collect an additional $5.4 million in property tax, and 1B would collect an additional $8.2 million in property tax. And each question was a yes or a no question. And of course, as was explained, if they both pass, the higher of the two only is the one that goes into effect. Um, it's really been quite an interesting experience watching this, seeing that this is an election that has no candidates on the ballot. This is about money, pure and simple. It will be interesting to see what the turnout is in this case. If anybody wants to chime in and let us know what you're seeing for a turnout or when you were voting, any numbers or if it was busy or
What time of the
sparse,
day you went?
what time of the day you went. We want to know if
If you voted early
yeah,
or by mail
or by mail,
or in person early.
right? So recently we had Melrose and Stoneham that passed their override.
Merrill's took a second attempt, I believe.
Yes,
They did not pass. I think they had one amount, and then in the last one they had three, I believe.
right. And Winchester voted it down.
Yes, they did last Saturday.
That was a bit of a surprise.
They've had previous ones, though.
I believe so.
They had a few in a row.
Right. So in Malden's case, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion about what can be done, what should have been done. I think we know that in the beginning it started out with just the 5.4, correct? And
Yes.
and then it went to a two-tiered ballot question.
Yeah, and that was over a short amount of time, maybe after for the presentation to the city council and after, I believe,
It was after the first
forum at the senior center. Correct.
Right.
And then it went to the second amount.
I believe somebody mentioned it, and yep, and it became part of the conversation.
And it's been in there ever since, and it was on the ballot.
Yep. So, whether it's whether people agree with it or disagree with it, that's where we're at. And I think I don't think it's been any more different than a typical election with any topic that people become passionate about. I think the difference is because it involves money. We also have you can throw in the renters and owners.
Absolutely. Because if you have a landlord, in real business world, someone's got to absorb it. And that's why you have rental property, is to make it derive an income from it. And it's going to get passed on to the tenant.
I will say that when I was out, there was a few of us went out a couple of times on the street and we were talking to passersby. We did see a pattern with some of the younger residents were saying that they feel that their rent would probably increase if this were to pass, but that was their opinion. We did also find that there was a fair amount of apathy in general, which isn't necessarily uncommon, but considering it's not a poll that's done online, it's just talking to people as they walk by. Some people just didn't want to hear about it, and there was quite a few that weren't aware of it. So I found that we were spending quite a bit of time, an unexpected amount of time, explaining what was going on rather than asking for their opinion on what they thought. And then we would just send them off to think about the options that they had. And
Because a lot of people don't know about it. If you're not paying attention to the ongoings of local city politics, you're not, if you tune that out, you're probably not going to know. I talked to several people today that actually thought this election today was in November.
Correct.
I did reminder calls today as well as the last couple days. And people thought it was in November. They were kind of surprised and caught off guard.
I think it's a partly because, as you said, people need to be enthusiastic about something, whether it's a topic or a candidate, something that brings them into the process. I know that there's a senior citizen neighbor of mine that I spoke with last week, and she said that she voted by mail early when it was first available to vote by mail for this. And she told me that she didn't actually understand what it was she was voting for. So I explained to her the options and what it all meant. And, she wasn't really sure if she made the right decision. That's besides the point. But I think what I found was some people, they vote, but there are plenty of reasons why people don't want to delve into the topic and find out as much as they can. The information is there
It
on,
is,
on both
but
sides. It's there. So we're not
it's not
faulting
easy to
anybody.
understand the formula for the property taxes. I was crunching numbers early on. It's not designed so you can do it yourself. You know, you're going by they had their calculator on there and you could use that. But on a yearly basis, just your regular assessment, they have their own way of calculating it. You just can't figure that stuff out yourself.
Right.
Um, it's quite hard to, even reading your tax bill. It's broken into quarters. If you're paying it on a mortgage, it's definitely not. I don't think by design, it's not easy for a regular person to understand it.
True. And then you also have this topic, unlike when a candidate is running and they spell out their platform and the voter listens and makes a decision. There is a lot of information involved with this. This chapter 70. Each side has their own explanation about why you should vote for it or not vote for it. And that's typical with what we're dealing with here. But I think it's a lot to digest for the average person.
It is. This one, though, opposed to a lot of other, if you're really tuning out politics, this one affects you. If you're renting, it affects you. If you're getting city services, it affects you. If you have a mortgage or you own a home and it's paid off and your tax bill goes up, that affects you directly. And usually you get good turnouts. People get passionate about it both ways, yes or no, when money's involved.
Right.
So I'll be curious to see. I mean, a lot of people that I talk to that have been here longer than 10 years, we're not crazy about it. There've been in some of the people are lifetime Malden people, but there's different people. Other people that have been here a long time are for it. So we'll just have to see. I think it's going to be a lot of it's going to be the turnout.
Well, I sort of noticed a pattern where it seemed like the longer the resident lived here, the more they were frustrated about it. That was a pattern. That doesn't mean it's everybody, but that was sort of the gist of what I was getting from speaking to people. And I think it goes along with people becoming used to how the city operates and what they used to for expenses. And then they feel like there's going to be a dramatic change and it's going to upset things. And in some cases, it will for some people.
Yes, yeah, and you're going to see. I mean, you'll see it next year on your tax bill.
Right. Somebody here said they voted early because I am okay.
And they're in rehab, and they voted early.
Good.
We got a couple questions for you people that are watching. If you want to chime in with the chat, we want to know if how the city of Malden presented their campaign, and if it changed your view either way on the override election. They had, I believe, 5 in-person forums, 1 online. There was the original one that they had at the senior center, and we want to know if the forums, if your questions were answered, if you had them, and then do you feel that your questions were answered? Do you think if you're a renter, do you think your landlord's going to raise your rent if the taxes go up? Are you concerned about that? If you're dependent on city services, are you concerned that some of them will be cut either depending on the outcome? And what special services do you depend on? And do you think anything's going to change in the next year after this election? Because this is a fix. So they're going to have to come up with a long-term fix. And do you think, what do you think they're going to do to change things in the future so they don't have to do this again? And do you think they will do something effective?
Right.
So
I mean,
so
is this the
so
end of it?
chime in and let us know.
Yes, and if you wanna let us know how you voted today, that's fine, that's up to you.
Yeah,
We find it interesting, and again, how was the turnout when you were there voting, if you went in person today? Again, there's a lot involved. It's a lot to digest, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a politician, I don't have any special abilities in anything, but when this all first came up and Chapter 70 was brought to our attention, I didn't know much about Chapter 70. So I had to learn and ask questions. So my point is to the voters, don't be embarrassed if you don't understand anything. Ask.
absolutely. Ask
Ask
questions.
because
Always ask questions.
that's what we're here for. And I know even going to a city council meeting, people they don't want to go, they don't understand it, it's over their head. And yes, some of this is up to our elected officials to take care of on our behalf. That's why we elect them. But when there's curiosity and you'd like to be more involved, but you don't understand, ask the question. Ask the question. I honestly have come a long way just by listening and appearing at meetings, speaking. We've had some wonderful people that work for our city that have been very supportive and always answer questions. And it's there.
Yes, that's
It's there. You have
uh,
to be willing to not be afraid to ask. And sometimes you don't want to know the answers.
yeah,
and
well,
you
that's
know,
okay. I mean, if somebody's honest with you, they'll tell you, "If I don't have the answer, I'll find it for you."
that is the
And
most important thing.
yeah, that is that nobody we don't expect everybody to know everything.
Right.
It doesn't
It
happen.
but we also appreciate when the information coming out is honest.
But it's also important to hold your elected officials to you gotta take them to task, based on the outcome of this either way, they're gonna have to do something. So, chime in, go to meetings, go to city council meetings, make comments. You can make comments online, you can watch the council meetings online
Yes,
because they're making decisions that affect you, whether it's monetary, whether it's services. Let them know, "Hey, your guys did a great job plowing. Hey, the guys didn't plow the street good." Let them know. That's what they're there for, that's what they get paid for.
that's right.
Just like anybody else, if you got someone that comes to your house and does a service for you, if you don't like it, you don't call them back. But you're gonna have to deal with the city again, let them know, and there's good people there. Also give them a compliment, when a compliment's due.
That's very important.
It is. There's some
You
great
can
people.
imagine City Hall hears a whole bunch of horrible stuff every day, all day, and nobody really wants to
If you're
have
somebody
to.
that's gone online during all this whole thing, it's gotten quite divisive. Um, both sides are passionate about the issue, and you know, it's, our democracy was built on people making comments and freedom of speech, and that's what it's about. And it's a different time. 25, 30 years ago, we couldn't do this, and it was just kind of you got to hear from it. Might have been in the local paper. A lot of times, stuff happened, and you found out about it later. Um,
Now it's instant.
there's no reason for you not to know. It takes a little time, takes a little effort to put down the clicker on the TV and stop watching that Netflix thing to tune in, but definitely get involved. If you got kids in the schools, you should be involved. If you own a house, even if you're renting, you want to get involved. The outcome is for you. It will affect you whether you get the services or not. Let them know.
And I think it's been great to see people becoming more involved, more passionate, more vocal. I think just with Malden United in general,
It is. It's
seeing
great.
people come in and
People that have lived here a long time that never had anything, they're very intimidated. They're not on any of the platforms, for social media, and they like to find the information out. And Steve has given a great
well,
outlet for
not
them to
just
see
that,
it.
but just bringing the people in the process together. So
Yes,
there's less
absolutely.
the people aren't as intimidated about speaking to the mayor or an elected official, whatever it is. That's just all part of it. It all plays into where we are today, which is voting. And that's ultimately what the goal is to get people to participate, take it seriously, and hopefully everybody can get accurate information, honest and accurate information in the correct amount of time so the voters can make their decision correctly. And whatever the outcome is, we know that the best choice was made for that voter with the information they had. So we hope everybody, as many people voted today as possible. And again, there are no candidates on this ballot today. So this is a little bit different than what we've had recently. I think They have for
No, the first proposed date was February 10th, which was a little while ago, and that
right.
probably would, so a little more time's developed. They had more time for people to be informed about it, to go out to vote, but it's a lot different than a general election. It's usually in November.
Yeah, it was good that it was pushed back,
Absolutely,
you know?
especially with the weather that we had too, so
Especially we had State Auditor Diana DeZoglio here in Malden at our
on the
for
10th.
our
On the
invitation. Yeah,
10th.
she was fantastic, but that's another video. She was really fantastic. Thank goodness we have her in Massachusetts. September 2025, the municipal election, there are 5,805 voters. It was a 15% turnout. Eh,
Out of how many potential voters? Registered voters?
at the time, 2025, I'm not exactly sure.
I'm sure
I
that
don't I don't
if it's
remember what the number was, so I don't
15%, I
wanna
mean,
get it
yeah,
wrong, but
yeah, if it's
right?
15%,
And
that's
then then the general election, the November 2024 state election, 22,875 voters. So it's 59.5% turnout.
well, that would have been the presidential election too, right?
Yes.
So
So, of course, it's gonna be
yeah, that's
large.
always a bigger turnout. The municipal ones are usually a lot smaller.
And I think the primary for the municipal election, if I'm not mistaken, was like 6.2% or something,
Yes.
which is, from what I understand, that's not abnormal through the years. That's
I think a
but
lot of people, Malden's different than a lot of other surrounding towns too. So you have a lot of people, because there's so many rental properties, a lot of people stay for a year or 2, 3 years, and then they go somewhere else. I think it's below home ownership's below 50%,
50%.
in the 40s somewhere. So that changes things on people, that are transient, popping through for a small amount of time.
Right. Well,
Come on, ask some questions on there in the chat.
yeah,
Chime in.
let's have some input. What do you think? Again, like John was saying about we had the yes for Malden and we had keep Malden affordable.
Yeah, did you learn any information from any of the forums, from any of the, I'm sure you all got stuff mailed to you, to your house. I know I got several. Did that help you out? Do you feel that you were informed? Did you do your own homework?
And also, if anybody has an opinion, does anybody feel there was anything left out from the public conversation that should have been brought out in the forefront more?
Yeah, what would you like to hear more about? Far as this override election, what information was lacking? That you wanted more detail, um, plans, more more line of details of effects either way. I know they gave you some overviews of stuff. Nothing was etched in stone,
Right.
and they still, I guess, they figured they'll be figuring the budget out depending on the results. This, and then you'll probably know after the next budget kicks in. That's when the changes will come either way.
Right. So I think once the numbers are all added up tonight, we'll see what the reaction's going to be from the public. Again, very passionate on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, I think should know some point tonight. Hopefully, probably after 9:30. We'll get a gist of what it is, and everybody can go on their business for a regular day tomorrow.
You would think.
Hopefully, yeah.
You would think.
S-
But I'm sure
one side or the other is not going to be happy, but it's the way life is.
I'm sure it's going to be talked about for a few days.
Oh yeah, it'll make for very interesting conversations.
There's a possibility that looking back on it, on both sides, what could have been done differently. I
Yeah,
mean, I think the yes from Malden really hit hard.
well, they did. They did. I mean, they have had, it got rolled out and presented it to the council, I believe, in September. And so they had time to prepare. But there's a difference. You're really looking at, kind of compared it to a big machine and just independent people. I mean, the city had their own, city has their own organized methods. And otherwise, you're trying to unite people. If you're against it, you're trying to get just the citizens your own way doing it. And that's a lot tougher than having the benefits of people on a city council and the mayor's office backing something. I'm not saying that they can't do it, but they obviously can.
There were a lot of
But
flyers,
it's a big
s
or it's
a
a
lot of
big
mail-in.
organized campaign, opposed to the Keep Malden Affordable was very small, and that was just citizens. So,
I guess there were just citizens involved on each side, but yes, the machine was on
absolutely,
BS side.
it's a big
It's
advantage. They have the format. I mean, they had they can dominate their conversations. They have much more people listening to them, so that definitely works in their favor.
the resources.
I compared it once already, and I'm gonna put it out there again. I'll probably get some hate for it. It's the David and Goliath. That's what it is. Anytime you're trying to do something as a citizen and you're somehow or you're facing off against some branch of the government, it's a David and Goliath because they have much a lot more resources and they know the methods.
Right.
They know the laws, they know what they can do. It gets quite complicated to register and do all that stuff, and they already do that.
The vote, yes, go ahead.
The vote yes. Okay, we got somebody chimed in on the chat. The vote yes group and the forums had the same talking points and message. Definitely a machine, like you said. Lots of time and money went into pushing their message. That's okay. That's kind of what we
Well, there
said.
was a lot of time and
There
money.
was. There was. There definitely was. Thank you for that.
I didn't I didn't really expect, well, I think in the beginning, I knew the campaign's a campaign, but I didn't expect, after the first flyer came in, I didn't think it was gonna be the rapid succession of,
Yeah, there was
and
a lot.
then
There was also outside groups, which I'm sure they all abide by the laws. There was outside groups that said, that they must register as a campaign donation under their platform. That we got them from, directly from unions and everything else to the house, that, to your house. And as a citizen, you can't do that. I mean, so that it definitely is a big machine. There's no question about it.
as it is with many campaigns,
Oh, it
it's just
always is. There's
difficult,
always an advantage.
but that's
Absolutely.
part of
They know how to work the system too.
being on the other side of it too, which is sort of why voters tend to get discouraged because they see, what's that saying? You can't fight City Hall.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
Uh,
it's very true. I mean, it's dominated. I mean,
when City Hall wants something, City Hall does what it has to do.
yeah,
Whereas the people that are running the smaller campaigns do what they can do,
yeah, and it's
right?
that's if they're if you have politicians, politicians are politicking. That's what they do. Some of them are part time, some are full time. That's part of their job, and that's what they do. And then they're quite familiar with it. I don't think a lot of them are babes in the woods. They know what they're doing, and they're surrounded by people, like minded people that they know what to do. If they don't know, they'll find somebody that does.
Right.
We're citizens, it's a whole different ballgame, So, I mean, I really let's see, we got another comment here. Need a independent journalist to investigate Malden's finances. What's been happening?
Well, there's
Kind
been,
of like Minnesota and California. Thank you very much for that.
well, there was talk about the
Yeah, an
independent audit.
external audit, which they said one of the forums, they said they already do one, but somebody said I think the state offers one, and
Right.
another one. There's one for a fee. There's one that's free. So I think a counselor brought that up. I think they made a paper on that, and I guess that's in the process. But any of that stuff does take time, and I guess this was definitely a urgent matter, according to the city people. So
Now, I will
they had to
say,
put it through.
I do remember that in the beginning there was talk about, it's looking like Malden might have to go for a tax override or proposal. And then I remember it wasn't that long after hearing that, that all of a sudden there was a big emergency that something needed to get done. And I questioned, and I've heard people mention this, w- w- how long has this been going on? How severe has it been for how long? And I know we've listened to the forums, we've heard all the explanations. It is what it is. But it seems like we went from the trash issue right to the
Yeah,
override. It was like one to
yeah.
right to the other.
No, that's true. That's true. I think that's a big because it went from business as usual, and then all of a sudden it got rolled out. We need the override within a month, a second amount, maybe a little longer than a month, 6 to 8 weeks. A second amount was added because they found another shortfall. And, there's a lot of people saying that, there's 20, $21 million in the city coffers that, in the reserve funds, but I guess they don't want to use that. And, I personally want to see what they're going to do moving forward. But I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, I remember Gary saying at one of the forums when he was explaining that. I think it was the one at BB when he mentioned, and I forget who it was that this came from, but he mentioned that it's not recommended that they dip into that, which is understandable. The word I didn't hear was it's not mandated. They don't mandate that you're not supposed to dip into it. So it's available, but I understand why you would want to have that available if something else
It's like an
happens.
emergency fund that you
Right,
have at home. They
right.
always tell you have a couple months to cover all your bills, 2 months. I don't know how many people that I know can do that, but it seems like every time you save money, something comes up that you gotta replace it with, so that little nest egg is gone, but yeah, that they were quite adamant on not touching the reserves. I think they kinda act like they're not there, so,
Right. And what about current city services? Anybody have any input on
yeah, you happy with the
the services you're
services?
getting now?
You afraid that tell us what, services that you depend on, uh, what other services you'd like to see, but that all costs money. Tell us what the priorities are for you. What services are priorities? What do you think they should be concentrating on one thing over the other? Um, you know, everything's changing rapidly. But like we both, me and Steve follow things pretty close, and we were both kind of caught off guard when this started. And it's kind of was a small snowball going down the side of the mountain, and now it's a massive avalanche with full momentum. The end of the campaign was they were going full on. So we'll know in a little while, and hopefully things will get back to a little bit more normal stuff again. People won't be dissing on each other on
Oh,
social
oh,
media.
right. Hopefully enough people, depending on which way it goes, hopefully the numbers will reflect that there was at least interest in voting.
Yeah,
Because it would be really
yeah,
disappointing to go back to, a 6% turnout for something like this, and part of the reason obviously is, people coming and going, right, of the city, moving here and then moving out, and with that sometimes brings residents who don't really feel that they have a vested interest in what happens with the city. Malden becomes just a place to live until the next person place. No offense, but that's just how it is, and it's understandable that, you know, the thought process is, well, we'll let the people who are here take care of things. But it is important to learn. You move to the city, you learn, and you help because even if somebody moves, you're leaving behind the rest of the residents who might stay here for years and years longer. And that all affects what happens with the people who stay here long term. And some of us have been here since birth.
uh, no,
So
I haven't been here that long, but I've been here for quite a while. We got somebody else that chimed in the chat. It says at the BB Forum, the mayor said that the city had been doing all they could do for several years to avoid a Prop 2.5 override. So if they knew there was trouble, why didn't they make changes? I asked why, and I'm wondering, can you chime back and tell us, did you get the answer on that? 8748. Can you tell us that?
if they could for several years. Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear that. I mean, when it started out, they kind of act like it was a surprise, and then several people have said, "Well, we kind of knew this was coming," and kind of went back and forth, and that kind of threw me a little bit, to be honest. I mean, the great thing is, for anybody that's watching or kind of really not into this stuff is hopefully you learn something about it because it does affect your everyday life. And if you went out and vote, you should feel good that you made the effort to go out and vote. And, enough people vote, you can get the results in your favor. And, that's why me and Steve do this. We want people to actually go out and vote, express yourself.
It comes down to something very simple, and I say this all the time. We're just voters. We're not politicians.
Right.
We're just like you. We don't we're learning, and it's great to learn together and bring people into the picture and include people. I think as unenrolled
No.
voters, we speak to everybody, and the party gets put aside in just about every case, not all the time, but in most cases, party affiliation gets put aside, and we want people to learn how to sit down and have a conversation and exchange ideas. And as I said earlier, honest and complete information. That's what we want. As a matter of fact, that's what we demand, because anything other than that is just tricking the voters, and that makes government not look trustworthy, which is why there is a lack of interest and trust
Well,
as a.
being we hear lots of stuff said about transparency and openness, and you know, I think I get really turned off when people don't give me the answer or they talk down to me, and I just we're all adults here. We got to pay the tab. We want to know what's going on, so please tell us. That's all. Be
we've
honest with
we've
us.
met as a group as Malden United. We've met with state reps. We've met with the mayor, Malden's mayor. We've met with people higher up in the state, and you learn really quickly. You learn really quickly who is listening and who is waiting to just get the next sentence out. And it would be nice to have an exchange with our elected officials where everybody's pretty much on the same wavelength, which is it doesn't matter what party affiliation you're with. Our elected official is listening, and if they can offer us some advice, some help, some guidance as to our thought process and the difference between what we think and what they think, then it's helpful. It all gets weighed out and it gets used at the polls. That's fine. So it's important that we all learn how to interact with not just each other as a community, but with our elected officials. I feel we are doing our part. It's up to the elected officials to do their part.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
sort of still waiting for some of that to happen, but that's for a different video.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, you can be passionate however you're voting on this. I feel really bad for people that, you think a couple that might have just bought a house and they're barely getting by, or somebody who's retired, an older person that's retired on a totally fixed income. And this can be hard on them, and that it's but even the younger couple with kids in the schools, they want the schools that which this doesn't really change the funding for the schools, but it does for other services, the library and other stuff. So, and the city let us know that. So I think I was probably more disappointed in the whole campaign of you could ask questions at the forums, but I really thought the city kind of ran the show. And I guess that's their job. But, the forums, I know that I didn't get to hear what I wanted to I didn't get answers to the questions that I had in my mind or the questions that I asked. So there you go.
And
I'm
I'll be
being
on I'll
honest
be
with you.
honest with you, just again, as a voter and watching, I think it was the BB forum. I sort of felt as if that was a sales pitch.
It was,
Because
yeah,
the people explaining why you should vote yes, but they were turning around and speaking to the audience instead of addressing the panel, the mayor, which what the forum was about.
yeah, no, you're right. It was tough. I really felt at times that we were spoken down to. It was kinda like, "Believe us, trust us, we need the money to do this, and we'll fix it," you know? And that bothers me. I've always my whole life, always been a guy, I want the answers, be honest with me, don't give me the runaround, and I just don't feel that it was let's face it, I didn't I was not happy the way it was presented, period, and the conversation on that, but I was trying to be, non-confrontational there, but,
Well, again, it goes both ways.
it
And,
does, and I totally sympathize with the people on the other side. Like I said, I really think that this was skewed the way it was presented.
the short of it is the city needs money. So when you hear people say we need an override, it's true. We do. It's just how do we get there? And were and are there other options to solve the problem? And I think it was the mayor that said that they, you know, when this was starting to approach, they were able to navigate through it the last few years by, you know, making
Yeah,
some adjustments. But here we are now. We're in what was considered to be an emergency financial predicament.
yeah, there's, we both work for ourselves, and we know a lot of people in Malden and other communities and stuff, and you meet different people, different backgrounds, different political views, different age groups, um, and so we get to hear a lot from a lot of people, and we know their passions, and you gotta kinda tread lightly with some people, obviously, but, the one thing I can say is 33 years ago, I just remember it a little different. I think things are moving pretty quick in Malden and changing, obviously. That's why a lot of newer people are moving here. When I know myself, I'm not speaking for Steve. When I first moved here, Steve's always lived here. We came here because it was affordable. And, there wasn't a lot of fancy stuff. We didn't want that. We just wanted to own a house, the American dream, own a house, put our kids through the schools and do
Everybody
that
here.
normal stuff. That's what everybody wants to do. But, now, the downtown area is nice now. I mean, it really is. But there's a lot of apartments. There always was, but there's even more. And that's changed, Malden big time. I mean, everybody knows how crowded it's got, and it's kind of gone to a different way. It's much busier. It's harder to find affordable anything affordable to rent in Malden now.
But you'll never go hungry here. It
Yeah,
is one of the best places to
there's
eat.
plenty of restaurants.
Throw
That's
in
for sure.
anybody have a favorite restaurant in Malden? We'd love to know that. Feel free.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us your favorite restaurants. I'm a big guy. I like to eat, so I'll have a new place to go to.
Some of the favorites that you hear about all the time, which are places to celebrate. I wonder if whatever side is victorious tonight is going to celebrate at one of those well-known
Could be,
restaurants.
could be.
Anybody have any predictions?
Yeah, make your
And then if anybody
predictions.
hears anything we haven't heard yet, then let us know, please. Um, yeah, we're coming up on an hour
Yeah,
on from from the polls closing. So
yeah.
we're gonna
So
we're gonna wait a few minutes and see if anything happens. We didn't want to make this too long tonight. We just wanted to introduce ourselves, give a test run, and
I'm
get some input.
John. I'm John Butler. This is Steve
Steve
Moriello.
Moriello, and Malden is a special place. It really is, and it's good to see people so passionate. We certainly don't want to see people beating each other up verbally.
Now
But
everything will go a little more normal, hopefully tomorrow.
what was that? Oh, did not get a straight answer.
Yeah, going back to 8748's question about the BB form said, no, I did not get a straight answer. So thank you for that. 8748.
I remember the first forum. If anybody in the chat was at the first forum, let us know. Let us know what you thought about, anything else.
Is that the senior center one you're talking about?
The first one was at the senior center. Yeah, and it seemed like it was a whole different ball game back then.
It was. It was a lot less organized. It was just starting out, but that's also when I think the first four people that went up and spoke when the amount was the original $5.4 million.
Right.
Three or four people in a row said, well, why don't you be like Melrose and give us two choices? Why don't I'll pay more money. And there was several people that said that.
And then there were the cuts. I remember one gentleman approaching, asking, when are we going to see the cuts? And I think the mayor's response at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was he pointed at the information that was up that they were showing the public, and he said, "Well, somewhere around that time frame." But I think his exact words were, "We're not sure yet." And
But if
that
you look at the future forums that they had, the later ones, they did have breakdowns and slides and potential cuts depending on the amount. So they knew people were going to ask them. So I'll give them credit for that. It still wasn't in stone, but they gave numbers from
right,
different departments where the potential cuts could be at each level. If they got no money, if they got the higher number or the lower number.
So if question 1A passes, which would bring in the 5.4 million, and I believe there would still be cuts, do you think the cuts will happen? Or do you think all of the cuts that should happen will happen?
I don't know. Me and Steve and I were talking today, and we both came to the same conclusion. It compared it to maybe selling merchandise or selling your auto and starting with the higher amount, but then you would settle. You had a cap that you had to get, so then you kind of negotiate down to the lower amount. So maybe that was intentional. Don't really know.
Well, I think the three-tiered question does that by default. It gives options.
Yeah,
But
well,
as I said earlier, this all started as one ballot question,
right.
and then that changed at the senior center, the first forum that changed. And it seems like it changed after somebody introduced the idea that evening.
Yeah. So so we should hopefully know in the next half hour. Hopefully, we'll see
We will
by tonight at some point, 10, 11 o'clock. But
Yeah, it depends on how quickly they can get the numbers together.
ballots counted.
Anybody have any projections?
Let us know.
You know? Yeah, as far as 8748 not getting a straight answer, what can we say? That's how it works, right? Sometimes it's an
Hmm.
answer is not an answer. And
8748 said did attend the forum at the senior center as well. Um, and we got 3544 says pull up the budget and start making it up for them.
Mm.
So I think they must saying. I think they're referring to cuts. That's what I'm assuming. I didn't really understand that.
Well, one of the questions that I had brought up during the conversation was, yeah, I know it's a tough balance, but if it was projected to get to this point, if it was projected to get to this point, should there have been cuts made, something done ahead of time? The only problem with doing that is it scares the public because at that point, everybody's going to cry out saying, don't cut this, don't cut that. Whatever it is, people are going to say, why? Everything's fine. Look around. There's no need to cut. And then you have to sell the case that no, 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 it's coming. We need to do it now. And then the public starts saying, we don't believe you, right? Then you wait, you figure it out. A few years go by, and then you're in the situation where you have to sell to the public the opposite, which is no, no, no. We waited as long as we can. Now we have to take these drastic
Well, I
measures.
think without definite, not exact cuts that they were going to make, if I guess certain if people are voting for certain things and services that they like, and then they vote to keep those and they lose them later due to cuts, I think they're going to be kind of disappointed. So I think more information, a better game plan. But I get you can't say that because you have to plan on what you have in front of you. But like I said, I think there was a little more information that could be thrown out there for the people if they want them to get on board. I think you have to send some kind of message that, yeah, you're going to suffer a little bit. You're going to have to pay some more and make some sacrifices. We will too, and here's what we're going to do.
Right.
But you know, based on all the stuff that both of us watched, just about all the meetings for everything, I didn't see, I didn't see that happen a lot, and that kind of disappointed me. But I don't want to harp on that. But I would have liked to seen a little more passion of understanding the sacrifice from the taxpayers and the constituents was going to have to be made. Then you guys have to, stand up and say, okay, we're going to do some changes. This is our idea, and this is what we probably are going to do. At least done it. I know they gave us figures, but I think it was just to throw stuff at us to stop us asking where the cuts at because they have never done any definite stuff. And I don't see any plan forward to change this from happening soon. But
So if neither of the questions pass tonight, how long do you think before it would come up again for a vote?
I don't know. I think you probably have fatigue. I don't know if they could pull that off in tacking it on to the November election.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I don't think they could do it. I know. I just
I think it would I mean, Melrose did it twice, right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, but they didn't it wasn't 6 or 7 months or 8 months apart. It was a year over year. That's a big difference,
well, that's true.
and it's a state election, a governor's race, so you have more people too, so
Yeah, I'm not denying the fact that if neither of these pass, that there's gonna be hard times in Malden.
yeah, there
You
was a
know,
city councilor that's been up there for a long time that said that they had hard times here, they had hard times there, and they said that, he said they got through them, but he did emphasize, I think he said they never had to do an override. That's what he said, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't think they ever had one, have they?
not that I know of.
I know the success for a gateway city for overrides is not particularly good either, and Malden is considered a gateway city, so
Unlike a gated community.
yes. Yes,
The gateway city topic came up quite a bit.
it did, and I finally got the answer when we went to the BB Forum. I actually personally asked the mayor, "Can you give me the definition of" for me, that grew up in an urban area, "what's a gateway city?" And he finally came out and said, "Yeah, it's an urban area." So it has different criteria, and the big one, I got some numbers in front of me. Compared to the other towns that passed the overrides, Malden per capita income per one person is ten to $15,000 less a year. It's $50,000 is the average. Where some of these other, you compare that to Winchester, Melrose, Wakefield, Stoneham, Medford, it's a little bit different. We're a lot. It's so that's a hard one too. People are struggling now. Everything's more expensive. So you can only really ask people to give so much. So we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight.
Right. I think that's been a big point. It's, the seniors and everybody that's, really tight anyway, which is many people are really running lean right now. So this
Got to put a plug out here. 8748 said Exchange Street is always my go-to
Exchange Street
bistro
Bistro,
on Exchange Street.
great place.
Get a free advertisement
What's
from
your
us.
favorite meal? Before we wrap it up, see if you can let us know what your favorite meal is. Yeah, it's been really tight for everybody. There's no question, and nobody wants to see anybody in, financial distress. The city doesn't wanna see that. The mayor doesn't wanna see that.
No, it's
I
it's
think this is
it's
more about the process that, people have gotten frustrated about. Could this
absolutely,
have been avoided
absolutely,
sooner? And then it got to the point where it became a major issue, and then it seemed like the grievance was, "Wow, this isn't being handled equally balanced." But sometimes it's not meant to be.
right.
Again, like you said, the money, the power, the influence usually, that sort of puts a cap on a lot of stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. Anything's possible. It's been a long day for a lot of people. So again, we want to thank the city clerk, the city clerk's office, and the poll workers and everybody that helps contribute to make our elections, viable and ensure that they run smoothly. Um, is about as much as a voter really should embrace. If it's not for that, then there's no faith in the system. And
Right.
it's important to make sure that we keep people understanding that they have their vote counts, unlike the audit, which we won't get into on this
No,
video. But that is another
you gotta thank the people for going out there and voting in person. Absolutely, right?
right.
I mean, that's what makes it. That's why
And we want people voting, but we also want people to understand that their vote does count. And now it's the job of the voters to make our state government understand that we expect our vote to be honored. And I think this all contributes into the problem of partly the problem of low voter turnout and disengagement from participating. I believe it's all fixable. It takes a lot of work, but the encouragement needs to continue. And we really do hope that people don't give up, keep going, pressing forward. That's the only way things are going to, increase in many different ways, encouraging people. Somebody just leave something. Can we trust our voter rolls?
That's from 3544.
I see no reason why not to. I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
well, if we can, yeah, you have to hope that, yeah. I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure.
there's a point where you have to have faith at some point and rely on the system until or unless it's proven otherwise, and that's case by case. That's not overall and blanket because
Right,
you don't want to do that.
right,
Case by case is if something needs to be addressed, that's when it should be addressed. Other than that, then there's no faith in anything. So have faith, you
right,
know,
that's it.
rely on the people that are supposed to be doing their job. And if somebody is actively not doing their job as an elected official, that's when it's up to the voters to make sure that somebody else steps in to do it.
Yep,
And we are big on the oath of office.
that's right,
That's like the foundation of Malden United. It's the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the oath of office. If you can't rely on that, then we what kind of system is it?
right,
It's the sort of pick and choose, right? So everybody needs to stay confident, stay engaged, pay attention. You don't have to hold a sign if you don't want to. You don't have to get out there and speak at a city council meeting, but just listen and ask questions. Ask questions. If you're interested in something, don't be afraid because not everybody is an expert and nobody is expected to be an expert. And the next thing you know, you're going to realize how much more you knew than not that much
that's
earlier,
right,
right? And it happens quickly and it's very rewarding because you can engage at a whole different level and it's important and that's what keeps Malden going forward. If there's a lack of interest, then Malden is just, the few deciding for the many, which is what shouldn't be happening. So if people like us can do it, you can do it. And
absolutely.
that's our message. And we want
Make sure you
everybody
hit
to
that like button.
hit the like button, please, and subscribe if you're not. We're going to be doing many more live streams and videos. This was a good test tonight. We thank everybody for being here.
Thanks for the
And
viewers,
and
and hit the like button.
we're gonna follow up with something once the results come in at some point during the week. So
Thanks
yep.
for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.
We kept it going.
Okay, we still on? All right, everybody, we're gonna sign off. Take care. Thank you.